Okay, the first step you want to do is take your flour and yeast as well as your water to make the starter of the ciabatta. And it's a one of the easiest breads you can ever make, and the most tedious step in this process is the fact you need to let it ferment up to 18 hours. You also add your salt. My bowls were a little wet, but that didn't impede this too much. And you just want to combine the dry ingredients before you add the water. And then you add the water. Don't worry, I pre-measured the water beforehand. And now you just want to mix that until it's well combined. And it's okay if this dough looks a little wet. It's supposed to be a little wet. It's also supposed to be really sticky. It's actually one of the more stickiest doughs I have ever worked with, especially when you let it ferment. And then you want to scrape off the excess flour in that into the dough, and scrape as much as you can off your spoon. And then you cover it with your choice of plastic wrap, aluminium, or reusable substitute, and let it ferment up to 18 hours, but a minimum of 16 hours if memory serves correct. Now, something you'll notice here in the next shot here, I'm at a completely different house because last minute I had to move my setup over to my dad's. But the thing is, the reason for that is something came up last minute. And if you're wondering, my dad actually does have a working stove range. But after you scrape that out of the bowl onto a well floured surface, you're going to want to fold it 4 times. And I would also recommend, uh, I sort of deviated from the recipe at this point because the only oven I have is an electric Dutch oven. You're supposed to have clay bricks as well as either a pizza stone and a enameled Dutch oven to help form the crust on there. But uh, my enameled Dutch oven wouldn't fit in my electric Dutch oven. And I'm realizing how much this doesn't make sense. That and it actually didn't turn out too different because it was in. an electric Dutch oven. If anything, the crust wasn't that crispy. It was actually very soft and tender. Uh, my family family over there loved it so much they actually asked me to make another loaf. And now you want to cover the dough with a moist towel and then let it sit for an hour. And the other thing I noticed with this run, it stuck horribly to the pan I was cooking with this on. And I heavily recommend you use more flour than you think would be necessary, or else it will stick to the pan. And in the recipe itself, it does not say to use oil. At least I couldn't find any part that said it's okay to use oil. It just says heavily flour pan. But this is my first attempt. That, and I technically couldn't follow the recipe. And now you're going to see me in failed attempts of moving this over to the pan. But the thing is, you either want to let it sit on a cutting board or the pan you wish to cook it in, which has been heavily dusted with flour. Mostly because this here is one of the stickiest bread doughs that I've ever seen, and you don't want to work it too much because it develops its own gluten. So I had to flour the top here, and then just grab it and then put it on the pan. And like I said, I didn't put enough flour on the bottom. So the bread came off perfectly, minus the bottom crust. But very unnoticeable when you toasted it in olive oil. So you just put it on the pan there. And I couldn't get the footage of me putting in the electric Dutch oven there. But I do manage to get it in. So you have to put on a wire rack and then lift the lid, set it in, and then you have to cook it longer than what the recipe says, because every time you open the lid to look in there, see if it's done, you let all the heat out. Which, the other thing is, you're not supposed to bake too much in this. You can, but it's not necessarily made for that purpose. It's made for roasting turkeys and that, chickens, potatoes, anything that doesn't need a exact temperature or timely accurate and temperature accurate finesse, like a cake. There it is out the oven. And now you want, I know this here is I forget what it was called, the eggplant something. But you want, I toasted my pine nuts in a the frying pan I was using. One of the reasons was one of the other problems with my father's house is the nicest dishes it has is redneck chic. And if you don't know what that means, styrofoam. So he barely has any reusable dishes, and the ones that he does have are horribly cracked or very tiny, like the little saucer there I used to put the toasted pine nuts in. But you want to toast these until they come to a brownish hue and start to smell like roasted peanuts. Well, no, not peanuts, nuts. And now you want to add your eggplant. Oh, I didn't realize I got one of the small animals at his house either. That blonde one was Lily. She thinks she's a little piggy. She snorts like one too. So now you want to add your 3 to 4 tablespoons of olive oil, and you want to then fry the eggplant. Or saute. Forget the exact wording for this, but the idea is you want to caramelize the eggplant. And you want to stir it occasionally, but I stirred mine every 2 to 3 minutes. And this here footage is sped up. Sorry about that, I was checking the audio recorder. So now you want to stir it, and as you cook the eggplant, the reason why we added a lot of olive oil at the beginning is because the eggplant, like mushrooms, it will soak up whatever cooking liquid you put in there. And then as you cook it, it slowly releases that oil or other liquid, and because the longer you cook it, the more microstructures you destroy, chemistry and that. But the reason why eggplant and mushrooms are porous is because of small microstructures. As you cook them, you destroy these structures. And that's how you can tell a really cooked mushroom from a raw mushroom. You can technically eat them at any time or point, but if you cook it longer, it will taste far different. So now you want to add the celery, red pepper, onion, and garlic. I think there's onion in there. I can't tell. Doing this from memory. But you want to push the eggplant out to the sides and then add your more oil and then saute that in the middle until it is bright and colorful, and then mix it all in. And I did not have the red wine vinegar to put into this dish, but I didn't notice too much of a difference. But the reason why, it somehow it ate a small hole through the container that it was given to me in, and I put what was left of the red wine and balsamic vinegar in that red Solo cup for holding purposes. Now you want to add a little bit of water and mix it. And you want to keep adding that water and mixing it until it comes out to a sauce-like consistency, to the point of where if you were to put it on a plate, it wouldn't bleed, but still be sauce-like. And I'm just tasting to adjust seasoning for salt, swapping out the Redneck Chic for a new one. And now that was done, so now we move on to the pan-roasted Brussels sprouts. And really simply, you just need to cut the Brussels in half and just set them on the burner after you place them neatly in the pan, as well as add the appropriate amount of oil, which is dictated by the size of pan you use, and you just want it to lightly coat, and you want it to coat all of the Brussels sprouts evenly, and just so that it would only touch the bare bottom. And now you want to cover that with a lid until about 5 to 8 minutes have passed, somewhere around there, if memory serves correct. And then you want to take the lid off to then check it. If it's bright green, then you take the lid off and let it cook for about 5 to 6 more minutes. And these here are actually really good despite the simplicity behind them. Literally, it's pretty easy to make these. Oh, there's that phantom beeping that always occurs at midnight. I can't find whatever is making that noise. But even if I could, I don't even know where it's coming from. Okay, so now you want to take the lid off. Oops. Yep, there we go. Take the lid off. And then let it just steam. I let the steam out to vent. We're done using the excess moisture within the Brussels sprouts to cook the tops of the Brussels. And now we're just looking to get that nice golden brown coating on the bottom. And you want to stick a knife through it. If it easily goes through, then it's done. And then you want to add your lemon juice. And I put it in my dad's oven. And here's the catch to that. His oven's actually broken. It doesn't go above 200. So it's just a glorified heating box at this point. So here's about the time I cut the bread the next day when I was making all this. And I went for thick, girthy pieces so I could cut them in half to fit in my small frying pan that I had for this particular thing. You don't necessarily need to toast the bread in olive oil, but from everything I was making, it just made sense to go a little bit out of the way to toast it, because it goes much better with what was going onto the plate. And I also set up the water for poaching the eggs. And I came across a problem. Couldn't find the white vinegar that was in my kit, that was given out that, and I didn't have any at this house. So, and the reason why you want to add an acid to the water you poach an egg in, especially for the swirl method of poaching, is it's all about the pH of the water. And you want that pH to be on the acidic side. Because if it gets too far on the base side of things, the egg white will start to dissolve in the water. And you can see the very small white ribbons around the egg. And the other thing was the local grocery shop, which there's only one, called IGA, and it's going out of business. And they they weren't open the day I did this. So I sort of had to make do with what I had. But despite everything that goes wrong with the poaching of the eggs in this upcoming segment, is the very first one came out nearly perfect. And that was because my theory is the pH of the tap water in Roanoke is more on the, it's slightly acidic. It tastes like lime, for one. For two, it tastes like pipe. So there's definitely some sort of chemistry going on there, but as I continue to cook eggs in this water, it became less acidic. And the thing is, the acid is what causes the white to stay perfectly solid around the yolk when you poach it via the swirl method, because it causes the white to coagulate a little sooner than not. But also I'm doing over easy poached eggs because I thought it would pair well with all of the aperitifs on the plate this week. And the other problem I came across with the poaching of the eggs is that so the main problem I came across during the cooking of this dish was not having a good acid for the swirl method. And as you can see in some of the photos, the eggs don't have a lot of whites on some of them around the yolk. But the other thing is, the only thing my dad has in plates is small saucers or ones with huge chips or cracks in them, and styrofoam, and that was the only plates he had that matched. The only 4 that matched. But despite that, you don't need a magna opus as a plate. The magna opus is the food it holds. But like I said in a previous video, the best plate you could ever use is blue when it comes to food.